It's here. We are redefining what it means to sit at the girls' table. Hey everybody, welcome back to Girls Table, a podcast where women founders, creators, and investors share their stories. Today, I'm joined by Erica Wenger, who is a serial entrepreneur and also a venture capitalist. Erica started her career as her entrepreneurship journey in college, where she developed a unique plant-based vegan bacon. She eventually sold the trademark of that company. She then went on to build a B2B apparel company that designed and sold and shipped custom apparel on behalf of 150 plus nonprofits, which she exited from. She then was on the founding team at Madefor, which she helped scale from an idea to a multi-million-dollar business before leaving and eventually working at a venture capital firm, WorkLife, as head of platform. She left WorkLife a few months ago to start something at the intersection of tech and impact. So, Erica, thanks so much for being here today and sharing your story. How are you doing today?
I am good. I am obsessed with this enthusiasm. I feel like people always meet me and they're like, how do you have so much energy and you're so positive? And I just definitely feel like you beat me. Like you are just crushing it right now. I'm loving it. And you've got your yellow microphone, which is like so optimistic and sunny and positive. I'm loving the vibes.
It depends what hat I'm wearing. I actually match my microphone to my color in my hat, usually, or my outfit, but...
Whoa, you're going very far. I'm like, it was enough for me to like put on a sweater and sweats this morning. Like I'm not thinking that far ahead.
Oh, my podcast is the only time I'm dressed up. The rest of the week, I am completely in pajamas, a sweatshirt, and yoga pants. So
love that. Love that. The real vibes. The real vibes.
Yes. Well, I want to start off with 5 questions, 1-word answers, so the listeners today really just go ahead and get to know you. So to start off, what is your favorite thing to do in your free time?
Movies.
Ooh. If you could do any career and money wasn't an issue, what would it be?
Exactly what I'm doing.
Who is your biggest role model that you've never met?
Oprah.
Ooh, that one's a good one. What is one thing you are the proudest of from this past year?
Listening to myself. Oh, you need 1-word answers. Listening.
No, that works.
Listening to myself.
And what is your largest goal you're manifesting for yourself to complete by this time next year?
Make the thing that I'm building a huge success.
Yes, and for the people listening, we'll get a little tidbits about what Erica is building, but unfortunately we really can't dive in, but we're really going to go in the background of her story and how she got to where she is today. So I want to start off, you started your entrepreneurship journey earlier than most people even know what startups and entrepreneurship really is. I feel like I always heard about it, but I didn't really know what it meant. So do you remember the moment when you realized that you wanted to go ahead and start a company?
Yes, yeah. So I always joke about this. I always have my best ideas in cars. Like I think every business I've ever started, I was driving. Not even just business, like project, I was driving. It's the weirdest thing, but I can visualize exactly where I was. Like I had this TikTok business idea and I was like in Beverly Hills. I was like, had my second business idea, which was the B2B apparel business. I was on a freeway driving to USC. Like I have these very strong visuals. And the first business that I started, I was on a freeway listening to How I Built This with Laura something, who started Laura Bar.
My favorite podcast, by the way.
Yes, such a good podcast. And she was talking about, I knew I'd wanted to start a business for a bit. I just didn't know what the idea would be. And she was talking about how she just went to Whole Foods, got a bunch of fruits and, items to make Laura bars at Whole Foods. Then she went home, made the bars at home, and like had her first prototype. And she just sort of made it sound very simple. Like, oh yeah, you just like, that's the entrepreneurship. You just start and you just create it at your home. And I remember being like, wait, that's so crazy. I could do that. And I'd had this idea in the back of my head for vegan bacon for a while. My mom and my sister are vegans. I'm very much not a vegan. And so I remember like after that, I called my sister and I was like, this weekend, we're going to Whole Foods. We're driving back to our childhood home and you're going to help me make vegan bacon. And that was like, I would say the first moment that I really kind of like took a leap into entrepreneurship, and I knew what the language was, but my whole life, I mean, I had a painting business when I was a kid, went door to door selling cookies and magazines to pay for an iPod Touch. Always been entrepreneurial, but I never had the language because nobody in my family ever did business. So I was super entrepreneurial, super different from my family. But it wasn't until I got to college, I'd taken some business classes, and then I'd had this moment in the car listening to How I Built This that I like actually took the leap.
It's so funny because the two things you just said, I feel like I'm talking to my twin right now. So when I was younger, I started like a store in my room where I would like paint random stuff or do random art projects and try to sell it to all my friends and family. And then also I had a traveling lemonade stand where I'd go into my friend's pantry, steal all her food and go with her around to neighbors and try to sell it. And I'm like, wait, what you just said sounds like basically exactly what I was doing.
Okay, do you want to know something even more weird? I also have a twin.
Oh, I don't have a twin.
Oh, you're saying I sound like your twin. I thought you were saying you're like my twin. Oh, I
No.
thought that you have a twin. I was about to be like, you both have twins.
But I love it. That's incredible. So you have this idea. You're going to start this plant-based vegan bacon. You go with your sister. You're starting to cook it. Like, what was the next step? Because I think a lot of us have ideas or they even like remotely start, but then they kind of just give up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the idea was more so just to like see what it could be. I don't necessarily think I didn't know what it would become. We just tinkered in the kitchen. That was the first step, was going to Whole Foods. It was tinkering in the kitchen. And then it was basically cutting up samples and driving to family and friends. I was in a sorority at the time. My sister was in a sorority, my twin sister. We went to our sorority houses and like had people say like, is 1, 2, or 3 jar better? I gave it to like the chef at the sorority house to, make in my omelet the next morning. And I just kept tinkering and testing and perfecting the product. Because as everyone knows, if you're a food and bev founder, it's a lot of iteration, especially for something like a plant-based bacon where the texture has to be great, the flavor has to be great. And so that was kind of the next step, was then just like after tinkering, having people try it. And then the step after that, once I had a great plant-based bacon, was like, okay, like, how do I sell this? How do I make money off of this? What does it mean to trademark a company? What am I going to name it? And that was kind of then like the next businessy side of it.
And then you ended up actually trademarking it and then selling that trademark, correct?
Yeah. 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 It was kind of a weird situation. So, and keep in mind, this is like beyond my first entry into business, like real business, beyond like little things at home. I was planning on, so I got like a permit with the city. I trademarked the name. I was planning on starting to sell at farmers markets. I went to some vegan restaurants to get pricing. Like I was getting things going. And it was maybe 3 months after the original idea when I wake up one morning and I have a cease and desist letter in my email. And it's from Earth Burgers LLC. Shout out Earth Burgers. And they said, we have a bacon company with your name, and we saw you now own the trademark, but we've been selling first. Basically, trademark law is a little complicated in that even if you have the trademark, it's actually comes secondary to people that have been using the name and selling first. So it was kind of a complicated legal thing, but they basically framed it as a cease and desist and said, you must stop operations immediately for this name and this website you have live and all your branding and all that. And I was like terrified, college kid, called up family members that were lawyers, and they were like, they gave me really good advice, which I tell people is if you're getting a cease and desist, you're doing something right.
Yes, I love that. Like you're doing
People
stuff.
are paying attention. You're doing stuff. You're in action. People are paying attention. And so anyway, the long story short of it is I ended up negotiating with them and said, like, I actually own the trademark and can prove to you. And I sent proof I'd been selling before you. You actually just had this idea. All basically, you can buy this from me for X amount of dollars. And we negotiated and settled on a very small amount. But it was the first time I realized, like, oh my God, like I can have an idea. And then within 3 months, I can get cash in my bank for that idea. And it obviously was kind of a weird way it all worked out because I sold the trademark and website. I didn't sell the product, but that's the story.
Oh my God, that's crazy. So after that, and I love that story, by the way, you went on to build a B2B apparel company where you really just designed, sold, and shipped custom apparel. So how did you start this and what exactly were you doing?
Yeah, so this was probably like a couple months later. So I actually pivoted the business. So the description you gave is the final version that I ended up selling. The first version of it, and this is why I always say great businesses always iterate, right? Like the first version of it was different. It was just bracelets. It wasn't all apparel. And I was fulfilling everything. My roommates were I was paying them $1 a bracelet. They were helping me fulfill all these orders. And I was basically doing it in my like college dorm. I got a lot of feedback from the nonprofits I was working with that they wanted a lot more apparel. And I was struggling with kind of a fulfillment problem because I couldn't have my roommates fulfilling my orders forever. So at that point, I ended up pivoting the business and created a bunch of online stores for nonprofits. So
Mm-hmm.
How familiar are you with drop shipping?
I
Do you know
did
a lot
drop
about it?
shipping a couple times actually. Too
Our
funny.
lives are a little bit too in sync right now.
Too
This
similar.
is
I
weird.
did it until COVID ruined it for me. But I guess I'll let you explain for the people listening what exactly is drop shipping.
Yeah, basically, and I also want to hear your definition of it too. But basically, what dropshipping is you're connecting an end user to the original warehouse, and you're not holding any inventory. So basically, like I was the intermediary as a website, and I had, let's say, a bunch of shirts and hats and tote bags on my website. I don't own any of those products. It's owned by a factory. And so what all I'm doing is basically facilitating the shipment from the factory to the end user, and I'm just the person in the middle. This happens a lot with like on like the Etsy's and the Alibabas and the Amazons. Like a lot of these sellers, they don't actually end up buying a lot of the products. They just connect to a warehouse and they just sort of, double up the pricing. So if it's $25 in one place, they buy it for 50, and then the person on the other end buys it for 100, and they're not paying any cash out until orders come in. So it's sort of like a low cost way of starting a business.
Yeah, and if you really look, Amazon most things. So like I would take things from AliExpress, I'd put it on my website, automatically would take all the information from it, and then I would just pay Facebook ads to sell it to you, being like, hey, buy this for 50% off. I was buying it from $1 on AliExpress, selling it for $20 on my website, and then just getting a return. So
Exactly. And that's the genius way to do it because you can then spend $19 on Facebook marketing because you have that delta. I mean, you obviously don't want to break even, but the idea is that you're spending, let's say maybe $10 on marketing per customer, you're netting that extra $9 or whatever for yourself. So, yeah, that's drop shipping. So I knew a lot of nonprofits wanted to sell merch. I knew it was a built-in marketing channel because they have a lot of followers on social, they send email campaigns, they have runs and walks and events all the time. And so I basically got their website store up and running. So they'd have their normal website and then they'd link to me where it says like store in the tab. People could buy whatever merch they wanted. I had, hundreds of different SKUs, from shirts to hats to tote bags to mugs to, kids clothing, everything. And then I would basically get a percentage of every sale. And so that was that business. And then I ended up selling it again for a bit last year to a competitor. And so that's how that went down.
wow. And then you actually went on to continue on to Madefor and actually help
Oh,
scale
yes.
that from an idea to a multi-million dollar business.
Yes. So the timing, I do a lot of things at once.
As you should. I love that.
So I'm like, okay, so the timing was I was actually building Made For while I had my drop shipping business on the side. Because as you know, with drop shipping, you can kind of just like do it on weekends and nights. And so I was doing Made For while I was doing that. So I joined as a second employee. It was three incredible founders. Well, I guess two founders and one lead advisor. Um, One founder was a Navy SEAL for 10 years. One founder started Tom's Shoes, and this was his next business. And then the lead advisor who helped us build our program is Andrew Huberman for people who like neuroscience. He's sort of like a famous podcaster, content guy now. Wasn't back then, but he is now. And they basically like kind of pitched this idea that they wanted to build a health and wellness company focused on basic habits and habit formation. And I joined as second employee and yeah, helped scale that for a few years and was an incredible experience. Loved building out the team, loved building out like the marketing arm and the ops and all the supply chain. And, it was just such a special experience. I feel like that was my real apprenticeship in learning how to build. Like I'd had my own businesses on the side, but nothing had really scaled,
Mhm.
And I think like, and even still Made For like, we were never $1 billion company, but I really saw 0 to 1. And so, yeah, it was a very special experience. And yeah, that was I guess my most formative entrepreneurial experience.
And what was the most challenging part you felt of being an entrepreneur?
Honestly, it's so crazy. I find it all so fun. Like I love it. It's in my bones. I think the most challenging part is taking care of myself,
Mhm.
honestly. It's kind of ironic, like you're building a health and wellness company while you don't always eat meals routinely and go for a walk like you should. So, and hydrate and all the things. So, I think honestly, the biggest challenge has always been for me to make sure that I'm taking care of myself while I'm building. Because I think real entrepreneurs are so passionate, so excited, they could drive themselves into the ground and neglect their health in the process. And so I would say the hardest thing for me was always like rationalizing making time. It sounds so bad, but like setting calendar reminders to eat lunch and forcing myself to go on a walk and making sure I'm calling and talking to my friends and family often enough and meditating and kind of doing the basic things to sustain myself and not burn out.
Yeah, which sounds so easy, but it's like, especially working from home. Like, I work from home. It's like, okay, I make sure to go on a coffee walk every day because I'm obsessed with coffee. And it's like my one time to go outside during the
Yep.
workday, get some fresh air. And it sounds easy, but especially when you're an entrepreneur, I feel like it's so easily forgotten because you could spend every single minute working on whatever company it is that you're building and still not enough time.
Oh, 100%. We need to go on a coffee walk one of these mornings. Well, you'll show me your favorite coffee spot. We just found out for the people that are listening that we live in the same city. So we're gonna go
Yes.
for a coffee walk.
Oh, down. I would love that. So then you're working on Madefor, then you ultimately decide to make the switch into venture capital. So what made
Yes.
you make that change?
Yeah. So I think what I tell people a lot is like on paper, I think it comes off like I'm a venture capitalist or like I'm an investor. But like first and foremost, I think of myself as an entrepreneur and an operator. Like, so what I saw with venture was it was an opportunity for me to join an emerging fund and be the second employee. And I very much viewed it as I was joining another startup, and the business model was just deploying capital. So I think like yes, it was definitely a switch. It's a new industry for sure, and I can talk about that. But I do think for me, I really love building things that are small and making them massive and doing it with operational success and building a great team. So in terms of switching over to venture versus going to another like operational role at a startup that's not deploying capital, um, I think the big thing for me was like you mentioned, working from home. I was
Mhm.
doing that. I'd been doing that for a long time. And I was kind of getting lonely. My 2022 word of the year, I'm looking at my vision board right now, was connection. Because like this time last year, I was really struggling with, I don't have a partner, I don't have kids. I absolutely love my life and I love being independent, but I wasn't meeting new people. I wasn't leaving my apartment all the time unless I was like getting dinner with girlfriends, a couple times a week. But it wasn't like I was meeting people like you or,
Mhm.
actually embedding myself in a real ecosystem. I was just kind of building at home. Um, and so I think the extrovert in me was struggling. And when I talked to a lot of mentors, they told me, I really think you'd like venture because you help founders, especially if you join a small firm, and then you'll get that like extroverted need out of you. Like you'll be meeting founders, you'll be meeting investors, you'll be invited to more events than you can even go to.
Yes.
And so that was the impetus.
Okay. And then were you angel investing beforehand or did you just start angel investing when you worked in venture?
So that's a great question. So I actually, and this is the case at a lot of firms, and every firm is different, but some firms let you angel invest and be an LP in funds and do SPVs, and some firms decide that's not what they want because it kind of gives like a muddled message. So I actually wasn't allowed to angel invest while I was working at a venture capital firm, but since not being at that firm, and before that firm, I've had, angel investing opportunities. And so, yeah, I would say that's also a good piece of advice for people I'm sure you have a lot of people that want to work in venture that listen to your podcast. I would say something to think about is if you do want to kind of build your own personal brand and you want to maybe have your own fund one day or have your own podcast, your own following, or your own thing, and you want to angel invest to reflect that, you should make sure you talk to your firm and see if they allow that. And if they don't, fine, but know that you have to invest outside those windows.
Yep, and I completely agree with that. Mine's the same way, but it's like prior approval because I'd always invest through a different syndicate to actually get that approval to continue to invest. And
Yeah.
I think you hear venture capital, a lot of people are interested in it, as you mentioned, but they don't know how to actually get a job in it. So is there any advice you have for either how you were able to kind of switch over from an entrepreneur to venture or any advice you have just for people looking for a role?
Yes, I have a lot of advice. So the first piece of advice I would say is make sure you really want to do it because you think the industry is interesting and you want to be at the forefront of innovation. You like thinking about the future. You're a very philosophical person. I would say just make sure you really want to do it and not just because you think you should do it. Because I think right now, every industry goes through phases. I think venture is very sexy right now. And I think I always advise people to really make sure and reflect that that's what they want to do. The other thing I would say is a lot of people, and actually someone told me this morning, they were like, the only way to break into venture is through warm intros. So that's your only hope, and go to events to meet people and do that. I definitely think that helps, right? But I truly, when I say I have no connections in business, like from like a family or family friend standpoint, I have none. Like, and everything that I've built or done has been through cold outreach and eventually building warm connections, of course, through that. But I think cold outreach is extremely underrated. And that's how I got my venture gig. I cold emailed some GPs in LA. I believe I emailed every female GP in LA. I think there was like maybe five. And I just kept following up. You always have to be thoughtful with the outreach, but I pitched myself as someone that could help them, really understood their portfolio, really understood their POV, and I got one to reply. And then that one took me to dinner and I convinced her to hire me, and that's that. So I think there's obviously a lot of, strategies. There's a lot of job boards, and Nicole at Harlem does a great job posting great new stuff in venture. And but yeah, my advice is make sure you really want to do it. Of course, do all the job boards and all those things to find stuff, but also don't be afraid to cold email, because like it worked for me and it can totally work for you.
I love that. I moved to Australia and I was trying to get a job there. Not in venture, I was in consulting, and I got mine from emailing the CFO of Deloitte. But I think it's so underrated, the power that like messaging people, because like first off, Twitter, I'm obsessed with. I could go off about how that's opened up so many doors, and I feel you're the same. Your Twitter has been crushing it. But
Thank you.
just like the power of messaging somebody, finding one connection, whether it's a school alumni, if you went to a big school, or it's a past job, or even like it's as simple as you have a connection, maybe asking somebody that you don't even know for a warm intro, or just sending the email yourself. Like, I think there's so much power in that, because I'm similar to you. Nobody in my family did venture. I never had a step in than anybody else. I really just got curious about it. And I met a guy who said, if you start sourcing deals, I'll give you carry. And after that, like a light bulb went off in my head, being like, damn, if I source the top deals, he'll hire me, and I'll make him hire me, and I'll be this resource. And so I just started doing that. But I had nobody like coming after me, trying to recruit me. It was simply just a passion that I had to invest in startups. And so I'm with you, where if people really want it, like don't just apply and be like everybody else, but try to build those connections.
I love it. And it's so cool to hear that you have like a similar story. I also think one thing that you hinted at that I want to double down on is just the importance of Twitter and building a personal brand. Like, it's something that you've crushed, and I'm working on, but
You're
it's
crushing.
oh, thank you. I've got a long way to go. But I think what's really important is it's not, and this is how I tell people, it's not like a selfish thing. Like, I don't like care about followers. I don't care about anyone like knowing who I am. It's more so to articulate my own ideas. It forces me, it's almost like a digital journal. And it helps helps aligned people find me. And it's very much like a service thing. So like aligned VCs that would want to hire me, or aligned founders that want to take my money, or aligned operators that want to work with me, whatever your case may be, putting your thoughts out there is actually a way for people to find you. And so I think another piece of advice is like start building that personal brand, and you will definitely catch the attention of VCs and founders and operators if you're thoughtful and authentic. And like, if nothing else, you can just take Alana's advice.
Yeah, no, but I agree with that. Like, every single founder that I message usually answers me. Let's just give it like 80% of the time. And I would say it's because of my following. As stupid as it sounds, it just gives that like verification that I'm a real person. I have ideas. People trust me. And so I usually always have founders answer me. And that is so important in this space. And then also, my first few companies I've really sourced by writing out to my followers, being like, what's your favorite Web3 crypto startups?
Yes.
Yeah. And you get so many new companies that you never even saw or heard of. And
Oh my gosh, that is so true. So it's actually really funny. So I'm going to have like my thesis for angel investing that I really care about, but I also have my own like miscellaneous personal stuff. And one of the things that I've tweeted out is that I'm allergic to animals with fur. And I was like, I will literally invest. Like, if someone is doing some really cool stuff in the allergy space, or in the like pet allergy space, let me know. And so you can find, like, even if it's not aligned with like your exact fund, like if you have these like personal problems, you can find founders tackling the same thing. You're spot on. The crowdfunding power is crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
and I'm about to go out and ask about more AI companies because I'm obsessed with ChatGPT. And I'm like, okay, the companies are utilizing this platform and making like actual companies out of it, whether it's to help with travel, to help with writing, whatever, it's bound to happen. And I just think that that's the future. So that's the next thing that you'll probably be seeing on my Twitter. But
Amazing. I'll tag some companies that I see. I'll help you out.
I love it. So let's just go back a step. So your main role at WorkLife was actually head of platform. So what
Correct.
exactly was your role as this?
Yeah. So a head of platform role, a lot of people are like, what is the platform? It's not as clear as some other things. So I'll explain. So um, basically, the way that venture works is you can kind of chunk it into three parts, or at least that's how I think about it. You've got the investing side, which is sourcing, diligence. It's the things that you probably think of when you think of venture. It's sort of the pre-investment phase, we call investing. Then you've got all your post-investment stuff, which is helping the founders after you've made an investment. So how are they going to scale their companies? What different things are you going to help them with? Are you going to help them with business development? Are you going to help them with marketing support? Are you going to help them with operational support? Are you going to help them hire top talent? So that's post investment support. That would be called platform. And then there's sort of this like third bucket, which is kind of in the middle, which I think of as just like operations. And that's a little bit of what most people are familiar with, which is like running a company. It's just like running a firm. So it's a lot of the back end stuff. It's who are you going to hire as a firm? What's the brand for your firm? And so, yeah, I think that's the best way to think about it. There's like the investing bucket, the platform bucket, and the operational bucket. And the operational bucket, to be clear, is not super founder facing because it's very internal. And so when I joined, I was technically head of platform, but we didn't have an ops person when I joined, so I kind of adopted that bucket as well. And so a lot of the role from a post-investment support side, a head of platform role, is being the point of contact between the founders that took the money and the fund itself. And that can range from a variety of responsibilities. Some of the things that I would do is, hop on strategy sessions with founders and help them think through, a really important top priority thing. I'd also help them with hiring. Let's say they really needed this, like, product designer, founding product designer. I would help them think it through and maybe do some cold outreach and tap into our network. Maybe it was hosting events for our founders in different cities. So I went to SF and I threw like a fun happy hour. So maybe it's blog posts, doing marketing support for them, connecting them to someone in our network who's like, extremely successful in a certain industry that they want to, add to their advisory board. Or it's kind of a variety of things. Certain funds specialize in different things. But that's basically what the role is. It's really awesome if you're operational, because your job is really helping founders build their companies, be a support system for them. And yeah, and then hopefully if they have a good experience, they send you more deal flow and it benefits everyone. So that's platform.
And were you also sourcing deals on the side and looking at founders, or you specifically were more on that post investment side?
I would say if I had to break it down, I was probably 60 to 70% just platform, probably like 20% operations, and then probably 20% sourcing and investment side. I think what was really tricky is sometimes with solo GP firms, they kind of are the ones who make the final call. And if it's a small firm, it's really up to them. So you can source deals, but it's really up to that person who runs the fund. So yeah, I mean, I sourced a few deals while I was there, but I think my time was best spent definitely on the platform stuff and operations.
Yeah, and I know since then you've tweeted out how you've made at least 10 angel investments. And so, what key characteristics do you look for in companies and also founders that you'd like to invest in?
Yeah, yeah. Angel investing is like the best thing ever. So I would advise anyone, if you don't angel invest, definitely look into it. You have to be accredited, so look into that. Just like a little asterisk, but it's an amazing way to meet great founders and see the inside scoop of a company. So in terms to answer your question, what I look for, I invest pre-seed seed. And my angel thesis is I invest pre-seed seed at the intersection of technology and impact. And so what that really means is it's anything from health tech, fintech, ed tech, some frontier tech, which I know Alana has more experience in. I invested in a space company yesterday. Space tech is very
Ooh,
cool.
which one?
Yeah, so Privateer.
Oh,
It's
okay,
Steve
awesome.
Wozniak's new company. Do you know Steve Wozniak started Apple?
Oh, yeah, 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 of course.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So it's his next company. Very, very cool. The data they're collecting. So yeah. So basically, what do I look for? If you're investing pre-seed seed, the team really matters. Like traction matters more obviously at seed because you need to justify certain valuations. But for me, I look for rock star founders that I want to build with. Especially as an angel, like I gotta like you, I gotta like your energy, I gotta want to text you, I gotta want to be your friend, gotta want to invite you to my events, I gotta want to get dinner with you. So I think what's most important is a great founder, especially as an angel. And I'll also preface this by saying the way people approach investing out of a fund is very different than the way people approach investing as an angel because the needs are
Mhm.
very different. So I'd say team is for sure number one. Traction obviously matters if I'm investing seed. I also obviously have to look at valuations, right? Like if it's ridiculous, it doesn't make sense just because I know I'll literally never get my money back. But that's not the purpose of angel investing, but I don't really do crazy valuations. And then I look for something that's actually innovative and interesting. So I have this problem with venture where a lot of funds and a lot of angels will invest in slightly better versions of things that already exist.
Mhm.
And it drives me crazy. As someone who studied social entrepreneurship, as someone who knows a lot of the issues we need to tackle, to waste our time and energy on basically feature updates over real progress is mind-boggling to me. And I have no interest as an individual to invest in those spaces. Um, and so, yeah, that's basically it. I look for something that's really different, really pushing things forward, great founders, also a market that I'm excited about, right? Like there's some people that have cool businesses and they're great people, but it's not a market that I find interesting. It's not a market size I find interesting. So yeah, it's hard. It's a lot of things,
And
but that's kind of what I use.
you
Yeah,
mentioned valuations a little bit, and we see such a huge variety of valuations, especially in
yeah.
my space, but also in frontier tech and everything. So, what is kind of your general valuation size for pre-seed, for seed, and then for Series A, Series B?
Totally. So I rarely will do Series A or Series B. So I'll just give you my pre-seed seed numbers. I think the only way you'd ever see me doing a Series A deal is if it's like a company that I'm randomly obsessed with, like as a customer. Like I make this comment, I'm going to manifest this now. Angel City Football Club based in LA. It's our women's soccer team. The next round, I better be in that effing SPV. I swear to God. So if you know anyone at Angel City, I'm just putting a shout out. That's like the only reason. And honestly, valuation I wouldn't care about. In terms of pre-seed, I mean, I think the typical range we all see is like 5 to 10. I just invested in a pre-seed deal that's 15. So on the higher end, but they're rock stars and have a great experience. But I would say 15 is definitely on my higher end for pre-seed. But I've done anywhere from 5 to 15. I would say 10 makes me comfortable. 8 makes me comfortable. And then from a seed standpoint, I maybe not. I'm saying this and like as I'm thinking, I'm like I did two 35 post deals, which is high. It is too high. I would say I like 20 to 25 much better than 30 to 35. I also saw 50, which was really interesting,
I've
but I
seen
really like the
70,
founders.
so
Oh my God, I know. And now that I'm telling you now, like, did I invest in the 35 posts, the 35 posts, and the 50 posts? I did. So
yeah.
maybe I'm just not, I think, okay, maybe compared to other investors, I care less about valuation because I'm an angel, right? Like, if you run a fund, valuation is everything because the math has to make sense. So I think this is kind of just my advice as an angel. I maybe care a little less, but if you run a fund, you have to care a lot more.
And it's really hard because like it's not a lot of people are like, oh well, you're in venture, so that's why you want it. It's like also too, it's going to be just harder to raise the next rounds, get the numbers that you have to hit to
Exactly.
actually make sense to have those valuations. So we're definitely
Exactly.
seeing, I personally think, a little bit too high valuations even in this market. And given where things are at, I probably am going to see it go down a little bit over the next 6 to 12 months. But you
Oh,
meant
100%. I completely agree with you. Things are still very high. And the things I'm telling you are deals I've seen in the past, 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. And what are like some mistakes you see founders make while they're actually fundraising? Is there anything that you see that definitely turns you off or anything that you recommend founders should definitely do?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and this kind of goes to our cold outreach bucket, is make sure you call people the right name. Make sure you do research on my background if you're reaching out to me. Do not do a template.
Mhm.
The reason cold outreach works and when it works is when you do it thoughtfully and you spend 10 minutes on each email. Do not spam 1,000 people with the same template. No, no, that will not work. Spend 10 minutes, learn about my background, learn about my previous angel investments, look at its recent tweet that I've said, and make it a very, very, very thoughtful outreach. I think the thing that I see is the biggest mistake is people think that they're doing cold, and in reality, they're just sending me a template and they've replaced my name. That will
Mhm.
never work, I promise you, because I can see right through that. I think that's like kind of the biggest thing. Every founder is so different. I think like I mean another big mistake is like not showing how passionate you are, not
Mhm.
being diligent with follow up, right? Like if oh my God, I tweeted about this too. This drives me insane. There's one person who I have met a few times, and I have said to this person, they're telling me about their raise, they're struggling with this, they're doing that. I was like, honestly, like I'm happy to help you. I know a couple people that could be interested, and there is no follow up. And I have a serious problem with founders that don't follow up. Like, if someone gives you an inch, take a mile. And I really mean that. If an investor tells you, oh, well, maybe make this intro, or oh, I'm happy to let you better follow up on that. So I think for me, I just don't really respect founders that like don't hustle and take
Mhm.
people up on their offers. And when I see that happen, I just drop it because I can't, I know I'm not that way. And it's hard enough to build something. For you to just like say no to things that are basically dropped in your lap, for me is just not how I roll.
Yeah, and I agreed with your first point too, especially because I worked in tech sales and I did the volume game where I was selling a technology. So I was like, hey, if this hits one CFO that needs this for his company, that's fine. But I think in venture, it's so different. Like you weren't asking for a couple $1,000s. You were asking hopefully for millions. And it's a small space. Like it is very small. And so what I always tell people, it's like my LinkedIn is public. My Twitter is public. You could easily see any connection I have on either of those and ask. And also, I recently got a company send an Excel sheet. It was, let's just say, 100 different venture firms they want. And then from every single angel that's coming in, or even somebody that they're having conversations with, they're like, hey, do you have one person on this list of 50 to 100 that maybe you could intro me to? Makes it so easy. They check it off every single time they got an intro. And it's like, that was so smart. This list, I was like, why doesn't everybody do this? Because it actually gave me a second to look through, and I'm like, okay, if you have one of the top venture firms I talk to every day, I will easily like send them your deck and say, hey, do you want an intro? Like it's not a big deal for me. I'm happy to do it. But the people who are just like very broad with it, like, oh, can you make an intro to somebody? I'm like, are there any firms you want? Any that you're like in initial discussions with? Like, give us more. Like, make it quick and easy because I think most venture firms will say they have like 200,000 things going on. And it's like the easiest that you could do, the easiest help you're going to get. So,
Yeah, that's so true. I actually had someone text me saying, who do you think I should have fill my round? And like putting it on me to go through my Excel sheet in my head of like everyone. And of course, I can pull up my computer and go to my CRM and like actually filter for the type of company they're building. But I'm like, why am I doing the work? Like, I mean, I could, but it would be so much better for you, I promise, if you send me a list of 50, like you said, that you already know the space, you already know your exact niche. I'm happy to make an intro, but I agree. It's like try to do put as minimal work as possible on the person you're making the ask of. And I think that's general. That's like for anything in life. Like if you want something, make it so easy. Send affordable blurb and, just make it simple for people, you know?
it's so important because it makes
Yeah.
it so easy. I'm just like, okay, here it is. Take it. I send it off as opposed to going back and forth, being like, what intro do you want? What are you doing? Where's your information? It's like, send it quick and easy, and then it will be easier for everybody.
100%. I completely agree.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about your due diligence process and what you look at for
Mm.
companies. What actually is your diligence process when you're looking to angel invest in these different companies? Do you talk to other venture firms? Do you talk to, like, have a few calls with the founders? What do you usually look at?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it really depends on the company, but I would say generally what's really important to me is getting my hands on the product and actually playing around. I think I've found one too many times mock-ups do not do the product itself justice. And it's a good way to really understand what's going on. I also like to talk to investors from previous rounds and get a sense of how frequently were they sending updates? How optimistic are you on their success? Why are you not either doubling down, or why are you doubling down? I also like to talk to other founders in that space. So, as I'm building out my angel thesis, I think right now of the 10 that we talked about, I think 4 are frontier tech, 2 crypto, 1 space, 1 kind of aerospace, so kind of space 2, 1 fintech, 1 ed tech, 1 HR tech, 3 health tech, and then the 4 frontier tech. Yeah, that's the 10. And I'm trying to build out really my portfolio of founders in all these different areas to then be like, hey, I'm thinking about investing in this. What do you think? Would you invest? And kind of leaning on my founders who live and breathe this, know their competitors better than anyone, to kind of get their thoughts. So yeah, it's kind of a little bit of everything. But I think the biggest things I would say is always look at the product. Do not just look at mock-ups. Do not just look at a deck, please. And talk to previous investors to get a better sense of the founder.
Yeah, I love that. Those are 2 great points. So I want to end it off with, do you have any advice for the listeners today?
Oh my gosh, what is my advice? Okay, so this is one thing that I really try to push off to people. I think sometimes publicly I can come off like I care only about my career and about business and entrepreneurship and venture and investing and all that stuff, which is very true. I care so much about it. I love building, but what's more important than all that is family and health. And I think that's the advice that I want to give is I'm sure your listeners are so ambitious. I would not be surprised if they're just all like mini versions of you, crushing the game. And I would say this is like a reminder to take care of your health if you've been neglecting an area of your health, and also a reminder to take care of your relationships. Call your mom, call your dad, have a date night with your partner, kind of go the extra mile. I think sometimes, especially the world of venture, can very much be a bubble. We kind of think it's the be all end all if you don't get into a certain deal or a round's not coming out the way you want it to. But I think what's most important is keeping the bigger things in perspective and being grateful for health and family, friends, relationships. So that's my piece of advice. And also knowing that while I may publicly talk about all this business venture stuff all the time, in reality, my actual priority is health and family and friends.
That's amazing. And I feel like too many times nowadays, we're all just so focused on being online and the internet and our persona. And you forget that these people are real. These people have lives, and don't forget to take care of yourself. And
1,000%. We're all humans, right? I think you can get so caught up in it's like a Twitter or whatever, but in reality, we're all human beings. So we all eat a meal. We all have people we love. We all have people that are sick. We all have people that are doing well, not doing well. We're all dynamic and multidimensional. It's just important to remember that and to prioritize that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Erica, for joining the Girls Table. For everybody listening, if you would like to connect with Erica, please visit her Twitter. She's absolutely crushing it. Erica_Wenger, but it's spelled Wenger. And then Erica, is there anywhere else everybody can follow you on your journey?
Twitter is the place, and I will announce what's next on Twitter when I'm ready. But
let's go.
Yeah, let's go. I know.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm rooting for you, and I can't wait to see you and continue to follow you on your journey.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.